Next item on the agenda, 5C, Puget Sound Energy Update. It's going to be from Greg Zeller. I'm going to ask Mr. McDonald to please give the introduction.
Well, as we know, on the hottest day of the year, we had a power outage, and it's not uncommon that we'll get calls asking what's happened to your electrical system, and I have to remind people that our electrical system is run by a private company, but I do have contacts there and did call Gary Nomenson, who is one of the upper echelon, and he agreed to come down and talk about our system, and particularly the people believe, because we have an underground system, that we shouldn't be having the power outages that we have. So we have Greg Zeller, who's the Director of Electric Operations, and he's going to be just kind of talking about what they deal with when you have a power outage like we experienced in DuPont, and maybe answer some of your questions.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Greg, for coming tonight to talk to us about this issue. And we're very much also looking forward in your presentation to hear about the grid system in DuPont and the different areas in DuPont and how they're impacted from the electrical side of things. But thank you. Please continue.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council. It's a pleasure for me to come down tonight and provide a little background and framework to how we process, what our processes are to when we have outages and have to deal with them. So what I'll do is I'll go through a little bit of framework, establishing some background. Then I'll talk specifically about the incident itself. And at the end of that, so what's that mean? What are you going to do? What will this happen again? What have you done to prevent it from happening again? So first of all, the framework for this is when outages happen, we rely on customers to call into our customer access center, our 24-hour operation, and that starts the process of restoration. That information is then communicated down to our 24-hour operations center, which is a control and dispatch center, which takes the information. They're looking for all the system feedback that we're getting from our SCADA systems, our systems that show us information real time in the field. And usually what will happen is we will have to dispatch an electric first responder to an incident site. And the reason we have to do that is because we can't, it could be unsafe to start bringing things back on without really knowing what caused the disruption in power. It's a public safety issue for us. It's a worker safety issue for us. And so we tend to, majority of the time, will dispatch a first responder to an address or a site to start the troubleshooting process. So we roll them from their homes, usually if it's an after hours sort of thing, and they will go begin the troubleshooting process. And what they're looking for is with the overhead system, they're looking for something that, a tree that went into the lines, a limb that came through the lines, a car that maybe has left the roadway, that sort of thing. So it's usually a very quick troubleshooting process. With the underground, it's a little more invasive. We have to, the causes are underground, so they're hidden. And when you put power lines underground, there's many more connections. They're exposed to a lot of moisture. It's good equipment and it's installed competently, but sometimes it fails, and it fails for a various amount of reasons. So when power lines are put underground, we're putting them down in with the elements, and we have to take extra care and caution in our standards and our materials to make sure that placement doesn't itself cause an unreliable system. Back to the troubleshooting process, what they'll do is they'll start looking for obvious signs of things, and usually these are our switch cabinets will have been, you'll see possibly smoke coming out of it, or you'll see some signs that something's happened. So they look for these type of indicators. If they don't see those, they start to open vaults and look for something that may be a sign of something failed. And when they find that sort of thing, then they will communicate back to our 24-hour operations folks, which which now communicate back to our customer access center, and we dial in the cause, and we start to have specifics about restoration, and so we guide the expectations of our customers in that way. In addition, we notify, I get notified usually of most outages, and if it's something that we need to call a constituent or a key customer or a city official, we will notify them if something is happening. In this case, what had happened is a connector failure had happened very, very close to our DuPont substation. And the location of that failure is, the type of equipment that failed doesn't fail very often at all. It's not a suspect type of thing that we would look for. We're out looking at the common failure points, which I said were switches and things like that, vaults. But this one was very, very difficult to find. And so number one is they couldn't find it, and we had called in backups to help the troubleshooting process, but they couldn't find it, so therefore they couldn't communicate information back to say, hey, we know what it is, and here's the expectation of the outage. So they're working very hard to find this, and they had to, they went through a series of opening equipment, couldn't find anything, so they retested, they re-energized the system, knowing that all was safe from a public point of view. And the fault happened again, so it was still present, so it didn't show itself. Then what they do is they put some tools on some of the conductors around the circuitry, around from the source to the end, and they will look for indication of high currents from their tests. And so this is why you saw the lights are on, the lights are off. The lights are on, the lights are off. That sort of thing was them testing the system to try to isolate this location down to find the bad component that failed. So that in a nutshell was the extent of the problem, the difficulty in finding the problem. Once they found the problem, they were able to quickly isolate around it, switch around it, and bring power back on. But unfortunately, it was after about 12 hours, and that's really not acceptable to us. We certainly, the process usually would take 3 hours in a normal situation when it's easy to determine where the location of the fault is.